Healthcare Money Campfire Stories by Eric Bricker, MD. Chapter 14. We'd like to visit with you. Compass had been growing like a rocket. We had over 700 employer clients, including multiple major national corporations and even several universities. We were selling our services all over Texas and across much of the country. Almost every insurance broker and benefit consultant in the Dallas-Fort Worth area introduced Compass's services to their clients. The insurance carriers were starting to take notice. That's when I received the email. The VP of marketing for one of the major insurance carriers wrote, "We'd like to visit with you." Fantastic, I thought. I rushed to tell our CEO, Scott. I figured they had seen the value of our service. They had seen the impact of Compass was having on their members and their employer clients. Surely they wanted to partner with us and distribute our services to more of their client base. How naive of me. I could not have been more wrong. Scott and I visited their office about 2 weeks later. It was a massive 16-story new building. It had a huge lobby that stretched the entire first floor from front to back. I was amazed that it was totally open with no support columns. It looked like an indoor football field with a low ceiling. It was covered with cream-colored stone on the floors and walls. We registered with security, received our badges. An executive assistant greeted us and walked us to a bank of elevators. We took an elevator to the top floor. When the doors opened, it was clearly the executive offices. There were no boring gray cubicles. Even the largest multi-billion-dollar corporations I had seen had boring gray cubicles. Nope, this office had all deep stained wood desks separated by stained wood partitions, with individual offices along the outside with glass walls. There were a lot of brass lamps. It seemed odd to see lamps in an office. Usually there's just the fluorescent overhead lighting. She led us to a corner meeting room with an oval conference table with about 10 chairs around it, 4 on each side and 1 at each end. We were the first ones in the room. She said she was going to tell the others we had arrived. She left. Then the VP of marketing entered. I had no idea what the VP of marketing looked like, but he immediately said his name, so I knew he was the gentleman who had emailed me. Next entered a rather short older gentleman, a middle-aged woman, and 2 more men in gray suits. The older gentleman sat at the head of the table, the VP of marketing to one side, and the woman to the other. The 2 gray-suited men sat at the other end of the table, and Scott and I sat on the same side in the middle. We all shook hands. The older gentleman said he was the president. The woman said she was in operations. The 2 gray-suited men were from the central office in another city. They had flown in for the meeting. Again, naively, I thought it was going to be just me, Scott, and the VP of marketing. He started the meeting. We've been hearing a lot about Compass in the market. We'd like to hear more from you about what you're doing. Scott and I looked at each other. I nodded at Scott to have him take the lead if he liked. He began. The questions from everyone in the room started only after Scott had been speaking for about 30 seconds. 90 minutes later, the questions and answers stopped. Well, this has been very interesting, the president said. The VP of marketing continued. These 2 gentlemen from the head office are in product. We really think of ourselves as fast followers. We're going to build a service that's similar to Compass. Thank you for coming. They stood. We stood. We shook hands. No one said anything. It was awkward. We walked out of the meeting room. The executive assistant was there. The VP of marketing said she would show us out. She walked us to the elevators and pushed the down button. We waited. Again, no one talked. We entered the elevator and descended to the lobby. We walked to security at the entrance. The executive assistant said, "I need to have your badges back now." We handed them to her. "Thank you for coming," she said. We walked out. Within about 6 months, the insurance carrier launched their copycat service to their existing customers. Some of those customers were already Compass customers, too. They offered their service at a price about 30% less than ours. For their larger customers, and our larger customers, too, they offered it for free. We kept most of our customers, but we lost some to the insurance carrier's free service. For employees that used this insurance carrier but were not yet Compass customers, our future sales slowed dramatically. They wanted something cheap that was already baked into one of their existing vendors, so they didn't have to deal with anybody else. Regardless of any differences or perceived differences in quality or value between the two services, Compass had something the insurance carriers would never have. We were not them. In general, people do not like and do not trust insurance companies. The service and people providing the service at the insurance carrier might be great, but the employees at their members tend to not want to interact with them. Even if they do, they don't necessarily follow along with what the insurance carrier is saying. Compass adjusted. Rather than engage in a race to the bottom on pricing with their new service, we refocused on different markets and employers that had different insurance carriers. 2 years later, another insurance company did the exact same thing. A year after that, another. And a year after that, still another. Of course, the price of the service from the insurance carrier was not really quote-unquote free. They could just bake the price into their other fees and premiums that they already charged the employers. The insurance carriers were doing to us what Microsoft Word did to WordPerfect in the 90s. They created a Me Too product for desktop publishing that could be sold as part of their software platform and box out the competition. Lesson learned. Almost any startup in healthcare will be viewed as a threat to incumbents. It's only natural. I was dumb not to expect it. Those incumbents have a choice, buy or build. They will either buy the healthcare startup and bring it into their fold, or they will build a competing product or service and squash the competition. If I had learned my history better, I would have known that is exactly what Rockefeller, Carnegie, and Vanderbilt did. As Mark Twain said, history doesn't exactly repeat itself, but it rhymes. Change in healthcare is tough. A lot of people don't want it, or if they do, they want it on their terms.